public hearing to order. It's 6 o'clock. And Sheila, you're going to go from here?
Yes, tonight we're going to have a public hearing regarding the property tax rates. The tax rates shall be set to produce the revenues that are required to support the budget for the fiscal year beginning April 1st, 2019 and ending March 31st, 2020. These rates are based upon the current assessed valuation figures that are provided by the Cass County Assessor's Office. And each tax rate is determined by dividing the amount of revenue as authorized by the Missouri Constitution by the current assessed valuation. And this value is multiplied times 100, resulting in a tax rate expressed in cents per $100 of valuation. The city's total assessed value increased by $80,106 in fiscal year or in calendar year 2018. On January 1st, 2018, the assessed value was $267,783,196. And on January 1st, 2019, is $297,863,302. That creates, by looking at our levies for the general fund, the general fund levy will decrease from 0.5261 to 48.83 cents. So that's a decrease of 3.78 cents. The Parks and Recreation levy will decrease by 1.68 of a cent, 0.2341 down to 0.2173. The debt service levy, after voters approved in April stormwater and street general obligation bonds, will increase 20 cents from 1.1305 to 1.3305. So overall, there is a total increase in, when you take the total of our property tax levies, they will go from 1.8907 to 2.0361, and that increase is entirely due to those general obligation bonds where the storm sewer, water sewer, and the streets will see a lot of improvements. And now, if any members of the public are here to speak to the property tax levies, they could come up to the podium.
We do a long pause every year when we do this, so I get to look around and see who else here tonight, say hello.
Do we get to ask questions now or is that later?
Please.
Questions about?
Now would be good.
Okay. My only question is, I know that the 20 cents doesn't get called back because that's a new tax, but how come the 1.1305, the last year's levy, doesn't get rolled back a little bit before you add the 20 cents back on? Is that just a calculation that the state does, or is that? So we rolled back the general fund, and we rolled back the Parks and Recs, but what I'm asking is, why wouldn't a 1.13 be rolled back before we added the 20 cents back on, is what I wanted to know.
The debt service levy is not subject to the Hancock Amendment.
Oh, it's not? Okay.
The debt service levy always is calculated to be whatever we need to make the principal and interest payments of the debt for the next year.
So debt service is never with the Hancock Amendment?
No.
Okay.
Debt service is calculated based on the actual principal and interest payments that the city will need to pay the following year.
Thank
So
you.
it's, even if our assessed value decreased, if there were no principal and interest payments, there would be no debt service levy.
That's settled? Did I get it? Other questions? Council? I'm writing a note. Seeing none. It's time to adjourn this hearing. and we'll call the work session to order at this time. What do we have on for the work session today? Let's look here. It looks like me. It looks like we're going to be making our work session. We've called it to order. And now we've all had in our packets, we've included our council's had time to peruse the concerns from the Cass County Land, what do we call it?
Landlord.
A what?
Landlord Association.
Oh, okay, Landlord Association, okay. And I'm sure we have a representative from there to speak tonight. I'll go over this with you. I will now read these 10 items that we got from the Landlord Association, okay? Number 1 is concerns about increased costs due to business license and inspections. Number 2 is concerns about scheduling required inspections, coordinating their time and tenant availability. 3 is believe the program would be easier to manage if required inspections occurred at time of new lease tenant turnover. 4, some rental units have already have the annual HUD inspections. Could this HUD inspection substitute for our inspection? And yes, but need further information. 5 is objected to inspection item of required carbon monoxide detector. 6 stated the tenants might not grant access for inspections, and how would this be addressed? 7 is waive fees in future years if initial current inspection is complete. Good landlords, property managers having to participate due to actions of landlords who don't manage tenants and units properly. Number 9 has stated that single-family owner-occupied homes should also be inspected. And 10, don't like government interfering with their business. So do we have a representative to speak for the landlords tonight to come to at this time? Is any speaker that wants to come to the, and tell everybody, tell your address and all that stuff, your name and address. And at this time, then I would say that as we have this representative to add anything, first of all, on these questions, these 10 points, is there anything we want to clarify on that or add on to? Or
Unless you had questions that you wanted clarified on what was on those. There was
I
one of
couldn't hear you. Is the
there was one
microphone
of them
on?
that you said that there you wanted more information on, or something was on there, needed clarification.
Yes,
I think it was a HUD inspection.
okay,
It-
you got,
I didn't need clarification. Did you need clarification on the HUD inspections?
I don't. Is there anything that I've said here that makes you think that we do have to look? Okay, from you all, I guess, is what we're saying, right?
Okay.
Okay,
A HUD inspection is for Section 8, and it's a lot more in-depth than any inspection that you are wanting to implement. So those that have Section 8 properties are wanting to know if that would be sufficient instead of the inspection that you're wanting. So it's something to consider.
Can I get your name before you begin?
I'm sorry. My name is Renee Kirchhoff. I represent Hummingbird Enterprises, address 112 Rainbow Circle in Raymore, Missouri. And I'm a member of the Cass County Landlord Association. I've had properties for over 40 years. You've never had a problem with any of my properties, as with many of the good landlords in the arena tonight. Our biggest thing is it's an illegal search and seizure. There's a lot of controversy about rental inspections across the nation. You'll find a lot of cities are being sued for rental inspections. I have a few notes from some members that have given me. Is this income-based discrimination? If someone chooses not to buy or cannot buy a property, why does the city think that they should go in and be inspected and not homeowners? Homes in the area also have codes enforcement issues. Robert, is there anything else? I'm calling on you because you've been helping with this.
I didn't have an intention of speaking, or I would have wore pants today.
I was thinking that, wow, Robert.
Robert Mayo, representing Hafnium Properties
What's
at
your address?
206 Cherry Hill Drive, Belton, Missouri.
Thank you.
I've had the opportunity to speak to several people on the council and leaders in the community about the rental inspection program, and I still have some questions about it. In the discussions, which sometimes become a little heated, sometimes, to be blunt, it's not clear what the stated purpose of the inspection program is. If the stated purpose of the inspection program is to eliminate the issues that we have with bad landlords, the proposed inspection program, in my opinion, does not accomplish this. If the inspection program is for some other purpose, it's not been made clear to me as of today. I think further discussion should be had in regards to understanding what the purpose of the inspection program is, so that if there is a program, that it is a program that goes towards that aim. In my business, sometimes we use the term ready, fire, aim. And that's what it feels like today. So respectfully, I'll leave that with you.
Thank you. Any other comments, council? Councilman Clark.
I was going to ask them a question, but they left.
Right.
I mean, I guess my question is, if HUD can inspect a home and they're not getting sued, why are cities getting sued? I mean, is that not a government entity?
HUD is a government program for people that need assistance, so they're providing the money, so they reserve the right to make sure that if they're paying for a property, that it is meeting all codes and it is safe and everything passes everything that they want for that person to have a nice home to live in.
What kind of rules does HUD have for you as a landlord, or for you as for the tenant to make sure your property is not destroyed? Or, I mean, how do they oversee the program? I'm not a landlord, so
HUD comes in and inspects yearly.
yearly?
And
What happens if tenants tearing up your house? Do they kick them out for you, or is that just something you got to fix and move on?
if they tear it up, we have the right to say we no longer want to have that HUD tenant in our property. And then it's up to us to get rid of that tenant.
Okay.
Other than that, the state of Missouri does have a bunch of regulations that we have to keep our properties safe, healthy, so that, the tenant is protected.
I guess thank you, Renee. My next question, I guess, is to staff, because it says here on January, whatever date it was, and I was at my home on a Tuesday night, so I don't know what precipitated us to get into this program. Why are we trying to create something in another bureaucracy is what I want to know.
I think this aligns with the city council priority of increased code enforcement. So it's just related to increased code enforcement efforts that the staff is undertaking at direction of the council.
Is it tenants coming to the city and saying that their residents are not being taken care of by their landlords, like no AC or no heat, or, I mean, I guess I'm trying to figure out why, again, we are getting into this, because we're not the ones inspecting this. I mean, the only thing we're going to require is them have a business license, and then they got to go out and find an inspector that's going to charge them a fee and then give us a piece of paper saying it's been inspected?
Correct. Yeah, there's minimum life safety requirements as part of the inspection. And you're correct, it is conducted by a third-party inspector, so the city is not obligated to have full-time equivalents undertake this project. But I think the purpose of it, and yes, Mr. Clark, the city has received complaints. We have been in properties, rental properties, where we have found substandard living conditions.
And I understand that, because, I mean, I've actually had a renter come to me one day and says, I don't want anybody in my house. She's like, I've been in my house for 7 years. I got a great landlord. He takes care of me. I don't want anybody in my house inspecting it. And I'm like, she's like, how do I get out of that? I'm like, going, I don't know. I mean, I think one of the bullet points on here I like as a council member, To me, anytime the water bill is changed, I think that'd be a time that we should have an inspection done to make sure it's livable for the next person. And maybe not require them to do every year or every 2 years. I think it should be done as, so if you have a great landlord and he has someone that lives there for 10 years and is happy, why are we infringing on the rights of the landlord or the tenant if it doesn't change hands? If everybody's happy, let's move forward. I think me personally, I think it should be, if we're gonna set this up, to set it up that it's done as a new water bill is established.
Councilwoman Davidson.
I guess my question is, we already require landlords to have an operating license, don't we?
Well, in the past, there has been a requirement for landlords to have a business license if they own 3 or more rental units.
And so there's
Very,
no
very
way.
limited.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But there's always been, but there in the past has been very limited participation in that.
Yeah.
Very few licenses issued.
I guess I'm just, because I assume it's on the honor system for somebody to go up there, a landlord to go up to the city and say, hey, I have 3 or more properties, I need a license.
Yes, ma'am.
The ability to enforce something like this is problematic for me. And also, I had a question for you, or Robert, for that matter. Since you all have the group here in Cass County, do you ever have discussions about problematic landlords and how to deal with that from your perspective? I'd be interested to hear your thoughts.
We have a monthly meeting, and we frequently go over laws, regulations, you know, how to take care of something or another, including how do you deal with a good tenant, how do you deal with a bad tenant. These are the Missouri statutes for landlord, Missouri tenant landlord laws. We go through those frequently, just making sure everyone is up to code. We also talk with our local legislatures, making sure if anything's changing in Jefferson City, that we know about it.
So from your viewpoint as someone who's operating good properties and has good tenants and has never had an issue, what is your opinion on how a city should approach, I guess, bad landlords or people that are running slum properties or whatever?
Slumlords or out-of-state landlords, I think, can be an issue as well. It's like anything else. The good people will come up and get their licenses and do what is needed no matter what. There's always people that won't. And I think that's the issue. But you're going to be punishing 80 to 90% of the good landlords to try to get the ones that are not caring for their properties and their tenants.
Thank you.
So Renee, again, the question was, how do we fix that? The ones that 15, 20% you're talking about.
How do you fix any business that won't get a license or won't do what they need to do for their clients? Because it's a business. The only thing is with a landlord, though, we cross over to fair housing. You know, and some of the things that have been brought up in some of the inspection programs is if you come into my property and it doesn't meet your standards and I fail the inspection, then do I lose my license? If I lose my license, do I have to evict a tenant? Well, now I'm getting in trouble with fair housing. How do I get rid of a tenant, especially if the problem was caused from that tenant?
And don't leave yet, because I'm sure
Okay.
there's going to be more questions.
Okay.
What percent do we have of property that is rented right now in Belton? I know it's a changing trend, but
35 or 40% of our total housing units.
so 35 to 40% of our housing is going to be suspect to this inspection process.
Correct.
Okay, go ahead, Steph. I'm sorry, Councilwoman.
I believe when somebody comes up to hook up water, aren't they asked if it's a rental? So do we track that?
We-
Say track, I don't know.
We ask if, when somebody comes in to make an application, are you renting or owning? And they'll tell us, and they have a different deposit amount than if they were owning, but there are several rentals that the owner keeps the water in their name. And so we do not know those rental properties.
And back to my point is that I think you're right about the out-of-state landlords. That's a problem. Along with that, you go ahead, Councilman Clark.
I just going to add, because I think what Renee brought up, one of the things too, unfortunately, bad landlords are just bad homeowners. I mean, we abated a house not too long ago, I think, over on King Street. I don't know if that was a landlord situation or I thought it was a homeowner that didn't actually live there. I don't know if he rented it, but we got rid of a house, and I think we have to, bad landlords, you're going to, code violation. If they're out of state, I don't know what we can do to fix that, because if they don't come, because if you get too many code violations, don't you go to court? Yeah, I guess I'm trying to figure out how we can fix it through the code system compared to infringing on a good landlord or a good tenant's privacy.
Well, a code basis would be primarily complaint-driven. We would follow up on complaints from tenants, for example, about a situation. And if we could gain access to the home, then we can investigate and determine if there were any deficiencies and attempt to resolve those. But that would be code-based or complaint-based, as opposed to a comprehensive approach that admittedly is going to take a period of several years to implement and become effective, but it would be a program that would have inspection results in a more timely fashion than a complaint-driven inspection program or a change of tenant inspection program.
Can you give me, I don't want Kansas City and I don't want Independence because they're so big. I want to know about another community our size that actually does something like this that I can look into. I mean, I heard
Well,
Blue Springs, I mean,
Yeah, we did a lot of research. Backing up a little bit, we took this concept to the Code Enforcement Advisory Committee, spent some time with that advisory committee, the city council, and they looked at some different programs. Grandview has a new program. That program is at change of tenant, as you suggested. It's not a program similar to this. I did a lot of research. There's a number of communities in the metropolitan area across the state of Missouri that do have real inspection programs. It's a growing type of administrative thing that's being accomplished by cities.
and I don't know if you know this answer, Dave, but, or Alexa, how many of our houses in Belton are classified as HUD houses compared, because I didn't think we had a lot around here, but I could be wrong.
I don't have that information.
I do know that any house, no matter the value, if it qualifies for a HUD house, can become a HUD house. So you might,
But I think there's only a certain percentage that we're allowed in a county our size or something, I don't.
Yeah,
I don't think that has anything to do, I'm not sure on that, but what? Oh, Councilman Trussell.
HUD houses in most cases are based on salary that the people own or that they make. HUD houses or rental houses are based on the salary of the people involved and how many people are in that family. I would agree with Renee there as far as the HUD inspection. Back in a previous life, I used to have some Section 8 homes, and when they come in to do the inspection, they can require a lot of things to be done to meet their standards. So I can understand perfectly that if you did a HUD inspection, you don't need to do another inspection. As far as the access, I think the point down there about when there is a switch in the renter being a new renter, that's an appropriate time. It doesn't involve the person's moved out. You can do the inspection, new person moves in. That makes to me like a reasonable solution to that particular problem. Because I can see, and I have had problems where trying to get access to my own property. So I understand perfectly what that means. So, but I would agree on at least two of those points that I think some of those are kind of weaved together that could be eliminated.
Councilman Trutzel, when you were a landlord, you had to make that house a HUD house, or did that tenant make that house? I mean, how's that work?
You put your property up for rent. A person comes in, says, I'd like to rent your property. Okay. They has to meet a Section 8, in this case Section 8 approval on salary and that kind of thing. The government pays me at that time $450. The Section 8 person paid $50, and that was my rental for the property. So that was how that worked, and then they would come in and check yearly to make sure that the house was in. If there was damage to the house, some of that came back to Section 8 to repair. You got Section 8 too?
Do not. I used to, but I gave it up.
I gave up Section 8 as well, so, but it is a government program, works that way, so.
Why did you give up on Section 8? I'm curious about that.
Do you really want to hear a horror story?
Well, because I've heard people say that they like, as landlords, to have Section 8 because they get that monthly check. on
Some
top.
people love it, but I had 2 Section 8s. I had a tenant that tore up the place, and when I told Section 8 I no longer wanted them, then it was up to me to get them out. And then I had another one that did an inspection, and they notified the tenant for the inspection. I wasn't there. They notified the tenant for the reinspection. I wasn't there, so I lose a month of rent because I wasn't notified because they were sending it to my rental property. So I don't like dealing with the government, so I gave it up. I do have one thing, though. If you're talking about doing an inspection between properties, are you going to do the same for home properties, for purchased properties? Because some of them do not have this sort of inspection that you're talking about.
I asked the same question, and the answer was,
Well, I will say that someone who's buying a home typically has it inspected before they make that purchase. So I would say there's already an inspection process for that home that's being purchased, because I had a nephew just sold his house, and they did an initial inspection, said what was wrong, and it actually came back and make sure everything was corrected. So I would say a good homeowner is going to have that house inspected before they buy it, unless it's brand new.
But the city is requiring not the inspection, but that everything is brought to code. And you can purchase a home with an inspection from an inspector, and things don't meet code, and they're willing to accept it like that, planning to fix it down the road a piece.
anybody want to answer to that one?
Chet, you're the real estate guy, so.
You were going to say something anyway, weren't you? Go ahead.
As I was telling you a minute ago about the renter, I got out of Section 8 when he couldn't come up for $50. The government was paying the rest of it, but he couldn't come up with $50. And that's what you run across with a lot of Section 8, is they can't make their minimum payment, the minimum payment that they need to share. The rental property is an issue. Everybody wants to live in an acceptable, safe house. And so I do understand where we're coming from, what we're trying to do here. But I understand from the renter standpoint that this kind of creates a problem. We need to simplify this thing, obviously, as to what we can accept and what we can't accept. I think there's some legitimate questions raised here from the renter standpoint, from the landlord standpoint.
Renee, one of my questions I had for you was, why do your group, why do they object to carbon monoxide detectors?
It's not code. It's not that we object to it, but it's not code, and I have properties that do not have it. A lot of that, I require the tenants to take care of the batteries in their smoke detectors, and if they want a carbon monoxide detector, I'll provide one if they want it. Most of them don't care, and there are properties that are all electric, and there's no chance for carbon monoxide unless they leave their car running in the garage.
Mayor, Brian Hunt, building official.
Sir.
Just to add a little bit here, when you buy a house, you get a home inspection. A home inspection is not a code inspection. Houses can be inspected by home inspectors and not brought up to current code if no remodel or certain percentage of work has been done. That's a home inspection. That's not a life safety code inspection, which I think in this rental, what we're looking at are life safety items to address the carbon monoxide detectors. They will be required in the 2018 code if you have gas-fired appliances or if you have a garage. So that will be a code item in the 2018 codes. And the 2012 code, you're correct, that's not a requirement, but when we adopt 2018 codes, that will be a code requirement. I don't believe the intent is that the government or the city wants to just make more money and get into people's houses. I believe our intent is to make sure we have a safe environment for our citizens and people that visit our city. This is another program that would allow the city to ensure that the citizens and visitors to our city are assured that they are residing or visiting in a safe environment.
Councilwoman Stephanie Davidson.
Dave, do you have the original 6 items that we discussed as part of this the
Sure.
inspection?
Those items basically are, interior inspection includes heating and electrical systems, plumbing and hot water, sanitary facilities, kitchen facilities, and certain exterior items such as exterior steps, stairways, and decks.
Councilwoman Peak.
I'm just going to throw this out here. I had, no. Okay, yeah.
I think that
Yeah.
was your time limit.
I guess so. I'm done. I had a friend who lived next door to a rental property, and this is just something that she told me. And the landlord would not do anything. There was a family that lived in this house that had a small child. The rent was, they couldn't go anyplace else for the rent. The basement constantly had water in it. The landlord would do nothing to help them. They were afraid to call the city because when this person told me about it, I said, please have them call, let us get in there. They were afraid to do it because they knew that the landlord would kick them out. They couldn't afford to go anyplace else at this particular time. So, I mean, don't you think everyone deserves decent, safe, sanitary housing? I mean, how do we help these people if we don't have exactly what Mr. Hunt said? A program that will help someone like that who is afraid to call the city or contact somebody. I mean, how do we help them because they're afraid and they don't have the money and I mean, what do we do if we don't have a program like this?
I agree with you 100%. They deserve a safe home. But they're not always rental properties that are in that condition. There are homes around town with people that, for one reason or another, their income has gone way down and they're living in situations as well. And again, I will repeat, there are bad landlords. There are bad policemen. There are bad council members. There are bad in every walk of life. And you're talking to the people here in this forum here today. We're the better landlords because we care and we're here to take care of our tenants. We're here to take care of our properties. The Missouri law, if someone doesn't fix a property, if something breaks on it, Missouri law allows that tenant to fix it and deduct that from their rent. I understand they may not have the financial means to do that, but the Missouri law does allow them to do that if they complain to the landlord and the landlord does not repair something.
Well, let's clarify something real quick. Any bad landlords out here? Will you raise your hands, please, so I can see any, so that makes your point true. Yes.
I mean, I guess my question about what Lori Councilwoman Peak just brought up, if this was true, I mean, we had this in and they inspected it, was it annual or every 2 years? I don't remember what it is. In your situation, your friend, and they found it unsafe living conditions, where's she going to go? I mean, again, you get into a situation she can't move because she doesn't have the financial means, but where's she going to go anyhow if we have this program going on that, but I agree with Renee. I mean, what Mayor Davis just said, I mean, there are no bad landlords, but every rule's brought on because of somebody made a bad decision or doesn't take care of their property, so that's why we have rules and laws. I mean, but I'm trying to figure out just where do these people go that, I would ask her to leave now if she lives in a bad situation, but you said financially they can't, but if we come in and inspect it and say it's not livable, then she's got to leave.
The
She
land,
has to.
Right, but then that can help force the landlord to make the necessary corrections so that they can move back in there. I mean, if you don't fix it.
a code violation and we can make that landlord do it without going through this whole process personally. I mean, yeah.
Well, and we're saying we're alluding to codes today, is what we're, but a good example, Brian, excuse me, was this week when we shut down a house that was not a rental. I kind of think it wasn't a rental. But how long did it take us to, and why didn't we shut that down, Dave, or earlier, knowing that we had all these problems? What was
Because
the?
we didn't have access to the interior for interior inspection.
Exactly. And so we know that these are unsafe, uninhabitable buildings, and we cannot get in them. And we know that these people are in jeopardy. And these neighbors all around are going crazy, worried about the safety of their children and about the people that are inside those buildings. That they may be, you know, in some kind of a situation they don't even realize they're in that kind of situation. So, I mean, we don't want to fix things we don't know that are broke. But, I mean, I'm flexible to anything that will work that'll make this better, but we have right now a preponderance of homes that we need to get fixed. And that includes apartments, duplexes, and yes, and that's a good point that there's a lot of homes that are in just as bad. And I know, Councilwoman Peak, how many have we seen? 43 permits in the last like 14 months for destruction, you know, permits to tear down stuff. In the last year and a half, which means the staff is doing a great job of trying to clean up the city. You were going to say, sorry.
I guess my question, Mayor, is, I mean, I guess an individual that rents could go into our website and anonymously turn their house in because of unsafe living conditions? Or, I mean, I'm just trying to figure out how someone can say my landlord's not doing what they're supposed to do.
Well, and they do that. I said do. They will do that, but what happens is they'll get cooked on that by the landlord. They'll get evicted somehow, or they'll do some. Brian, you were going to say something. Go ahead.
What happens is the tenant calls me and
Okay.
says, I can't get my landlord to fix this. My stool's about to fall through the floor. My bathtub doesn't drain. My ceiling is leaking. What can you do about that? As a building official, I have to say what we've discussed tonight. If you invite me in and I determine that that house is uninhabitable, you have to move out because the house is uninhabitable. I can't do that because this is the only place I can afford. Can't you do something to make my landlord fix this? So then the flip side of that is the landlord calls me and says, I can't get my tenant out of my unit. What can I do? I'm paying the water bill. I'm paying the electric bill. You shut their water off. You shut their electricity off. Then it becomes an uninhabitable house. So we, the city, get to go force that tenant out. Then it becomes their issue about the belongings or whatever. But we got the tenant out of the house. So it's not a win. I hate to use the word win. It's not a good situation for the landlords. It's not a good situation for the tenants. It's not a good situation for the city. But where do we meet to try to make a program work? Again, good landlords. I guess my question for good landlords is, you feel like we're intrusive, you don't want us to inspect your property because you're good landlords. I don't understand why you don't want us to inspect your property to affirm that you are a good landlord, when in turn, we're treating everybody that is a landlord the same, so we have the ability to recognize or discover the bad landlords and weed them out.
The tenant does have the ability to deny access. So that's something to think about too if you're putting a program in. If the tenant says no, they won't let an inspector in. They do have that ability. It is their home. landlords. It's our property, but it's their home.
Councilwoman Davidson.
You live in Raymore, right?
Yes.
Does Raymore have an inspection program?
No, and I have properties in Belton, Raymore, and Peculiar, and the landlords in the, out here today have got everywhere from Kansas City, I think we've got maybe a Harrisonville or something, so it's the whole Grandview, so we've got the whole South Kansas City area.
I guess the trouble for me is I think that everybody here can actually agree that everyone wants to have safe rental properties. The question is, how do we go about doing that? And I wonder if there's even a way that we can back into that, if there was, maybe there is an ordinance or a requirement that would make it so that the renter, the utilities have to be in the, I'm just brainstorming, but that the utilities have to be in the renter's name so that we could actually track rental properties via when they're coming up to City Hall to sign up for water, and then they have to declare that it's a rental property, and then that information is put into a database so that you can then cross-check the licenses that you have against who's actually applying for water service as a rental. I mean, I don't know. These are just like ideas, but is there a different way that we can look at this?
And then what would you do with it? That'd be the question.
You'd be able to then, if you are able to match up and say, we show that there's a rental at this property and that this person also has a license for that to be a rental, cool, check that off the list. But if there's somebody coming up to apply for water as a rental and you do not have a license for that, then maybe you can do some investigating there and see if there's somebody that you need to be approaching for a license and back into it that way.
And
There
I
are
had a
some
person-
properties that are multifamily that are on 1 meter, though, and that's where the landlord
And I
tends to
was going
put
to
the,
come
in
to
their
that.
name.
I think
Yeah.
some of the mobile parks have it that way. And the other part is I had a person talk to me after they saw the schedule, and they said, Mayor, what do you do about a person that sublets it's a rental property, and they sublet to let other people live in their house. They rent the place they live in, they sublet it out. And we've got that where there's several people, multitudes of people living in the same house, and they're charging them rent. Now, I hadn't thought about that, but I guess that happens frequently.
Not for good landlords, because we write it into our contract that we don't allow sublet, we don't allow extra people in there without notifying us who is there.
I think that actually is done in like, not even the people own the homes themselves and then sublet.
Well, we've learned too that we've caught businesses doing the same thing, and the landlords don't know, or the owners, the actual owners don't know it. But Councilman Van Winkle was next. Sorry to wake you again.
No, that's all right.
Okay.
Renee, our inspector asked a question, and I didn't quite understand how your answer fit to what he was asking. And that was, why would the good landlords not want us to have a means to inspect everyone so we can improve the ones that aren't good landlords? Because if you're a good landlord and your property's being kept up, the inspection is going to show that. We're going to confirm that you're a good landlord, and we're moving on. We're looking for the ones that need the improvements made in the residences.
First of all, we kind of feel it's discrimination that you're inspecting a tenant property and not a home-owned property. Second thing, more importantly, is there's a money and a time issue there. Some landlords have 25, 50 properties. That's a lot to go around with an inspector to inspect that multitude of properties, arranging it with the tenant, making sure the dog's put up, et cetera, things like that. So it's a time constraint for the tenant, time constraint for the landlord. If you have an issue with a landlord and you want to inspect other properties, I understand that. But like I said, I've had property for 40 years and I've never had a tenant say there's a code issue. They contact me and I take care of it.
And I guess as far as how I see this and the side of the issue I'm on is, one, I don't I don't want us intruding on people's homes, whether they're renting or not. I would support us at the change of tenants making that inspection. I don't know that I can agree with the fact that we're trying to discriminate, because there's a big difference between me owning a home and me having a business. Me being the business is I own property that I rent out and make money off of. It's not my home. It's not where I live. So if I'm owning this residence, I think we're mixing apples and oranges here. I think it's two separate issues. I kind of agree with Councilman Trutzel as far as, having these inspections would be more appropriate when they change. We discussed, the licensing. I don't feel like it's necessary to license a individual residence. I think we're kind of piling on if we're making somebody buy a license just for 10 different residences just because they happen to own 10. If they're in business, they're in business. I don't know why an individual would need to buy more than one license. And one question for you. You said we have about 35% rentals.
Approximately, yes, sir. Mhm.
How's that measured to comparable communities around?
I don't think I have a feel for that.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Councilman Clark.
One of the questions that Councilman Van Winkle just brought up, so what happens if a landlord has 5 different LLCs? Do they got to get a business license for every one, or can they attach all 5 of those LLCs because they have 10 homes or 5 homes and each one of them's individually owned by a different LLC? Is that one business license or is that 5 business licenses?
Patrick, do you know?
Well, I do believe under your code. I believe under the code as it's currently drafted, the business license is required for the business. Each LLC is a different business.
Right.
Just like there's 2 Dollar Generals in town, and if they were both owned by technically different Dollar General LLCs, they both have to have different
But they don't have to have 2
license.
different business
No,
licenses?
they would in that case, or like a chain restaurant or a franchise or something like that. That's the way that I like to always think about it.
I guess my other question I had is this, we have some commercial properties that probably could fit into this category too. Do we ever inspect commercial properties before they're rented out?
Dave, you want to shoot at this one?
No, we don't have a program for commercial inspections.
We do have an annual inspection before they get their business license, though, for fire code.
I guess the fire department comes once a year and checks your
Yes.
business and. It just happens, so yeah, it is.
Wow, Chief, your turn. What happens if you go into a business and find it unacceptable? You gotta, yeah.
It would depend on what the violation was. So if it's something immediate to life safety, exits, a building that's unstable, something like that, we could immediately post the building and then follow up. They'd have to come get a permit, submit their plans, bring it back up to code, basically. If they're minor violations, sometimes we'll help them fix them while they're there. For instance, it's electrical panels is a very common thing to be blocked. So our folks will educate them, help them move the stuff out and say, this is the area you should keep clean. But otherwise, if you can't fix it at that time and it's what we'd call a severe violation, we would have to post it, which does not happen very often, but it's occasional. So the fire marshal is in charge of that. He's really the only one we have post anything. If he's not available, we end up relying on the building officials to come help us out with that.
That's interesting. Hanging wires from the ceiling, that kind of thing. Okay. Councilman Clark.
I just got in trouble, by the way, so. Wow. I mean, I have a fire extinguisher, and they want my receipt. I'm like going, I don't know. I bought it at Menards 6 months ago. Because I used to get in trouble every year because I don't have an active fire extinguisher, which I have nothing flammable in my business. So but I guess I'm trying to figure out why I need to have a receipt to show when I bought that fire extinguisher.
by the code, they have to be inspected yearly, and so that's kind of the compromise we've had. Some people don't want to pay for an annual inspection. They feel like it's easier to go out and buy a brand new one every year. But kind of back to the same fact, every person could tell us, I just bought this last week. We wouldn't have any idea when they bought it.
Well, mine are starting to stack up because I just go buy one every year, so.
Well, that kind of goes along with what we're talking about too, though, in a different kind of way. Did you have something over there, Councilman Peak? You were kind of flipping your hands around like. Nope, I'm good. Over here again? Anybody, staff, you got anything else going on? Renee, do you have anything else today?
No.
Looks like we've got a lot of talking to do yet.
You do, and the Cass County Landlords Association would be more than willing to visit with anyone that would like to visit with them and go further into it, because we have questions too. You know, if it goes through in any fashion, we want to be informed and know what it's all about, and we would welcome someone to come to our meetings anytime.
I've done that before, and it's kind of tough sometimes, you know that, so. Councilman Clark, what were you going to say?
Only thing I was going to bring up is, I mean, it'd be nice to maybe draft up something with them in on it and just try to come together with an agreement. I mean, I think there's a lot of us here that think the same, so, I mean, I think you could probably take some of our notes from tonight's meeting and move forward with some type of draft, I would think.
I agree. It's been good that we've had this meeting this evening. I've seen a lot of good things that have come out that we needed to have discussion on. I just hate watching the news and see that some kids died because they didn't have carbon monoxide warnings or fire warnings, or they didn't have this or that, or they're eating lead paint off the walls, or and that's the stuff that keeps you up at night wondering what could we have done. Yes.
You brought that up, and I don't know his first, I don't know.
Brian,
I'm sorry. He brought up the 2018 codes, was 2019. How can we go by the 2012 codes and not the 2018 codes? Is that something that just came out, or, I mean, we that far behind, or?
We'll be bringing the 2018 code to the city council yet this year for adoption. It's the
Just trying to figure out why.
the building, it's the,
I mean, we're in almost 2020.
Yeah.
Right, the
cycles always run
building
late.
code cycles are a 3-year cycle. Personally, I've been in this business for 25 years. My personal opinion is we don't need to update a code, building codes every 3 years. I try to attend the annual conferences and keep up education-wise on code changes. We always have the ability to amend our code if something comes in, a new code. But to keep up and change a code every 3 years, as you say, it's 2019. A code process usually takes at least a year to get through a process and get the code adoptions amendments done, so you're already a year in. This year at the annual conference, we are going to be discussing the 2021 codes. So I commend that you're in 2012. There are a lot of cities that are still in 2006 codes, 2009 codes. So that's just a little history on the background in codes. To back up what the mayor said about carbon monoxide, we were out on a call end of last week. Actually, they called the fire department because they were had headaches and were dizzy and feeling a little ill. And it was a unit that did not have a carbon monoxide detector and had a faulty flue in a hot water heater. So the silent deadly killer is out there.
Mm-hmm. Well, we as a city can't amend the 2012 codes and say we want to make sure carbon monoxide detectors are part of our code now, or we have to adopt the whole code at one time. I mean,
if you wanted to make an amendment to a code that says we want to require I believe our code does require carbon monoxide detectors. I'd have to get in and research that. But I mean, yeah, as a council, you can always amend a code to read what you want. But then, are you going to come? The problem with that is, are you going to spend all your time amending codes for this, for that, for this, for that, or do we take forward a new code, which brings everything up to date in a process?
We're a year and a half into the code, we're a year and a half away from 2021 being updated again. So it's just, I mean, I don't know.
Councilman Trutzel was next.
I think we need to clarify something here. my house is 15 years old. It was built to codes in the year 15. So I'm approved by the time I entered my house. So we can't go back and say, we're changing just because it's okay in 2015, now we're going to change it to 2018, I got to do a whole bunch of changes. No. People who live in those houses, they were approved at the time they moved in, are still approved.
That is correct. At the time your house was built and you received a certificate of occupancy which states that your house was inspected and met the code that was adopted at the time your house was built, you are okay unless you do 50% remodel. Then you trigger having to come up to the new code. There is a section in the code, in the 2015 code that stated if you did, that's when the carbon monoxide detector issues really came to light, and there was a section in that code that says any work on a house would require you, if you had gas appliances or a garage, but you would have had to adopt the 2015 code to put that into effect. In the same respect, again, as I said, we can amend and delete. You have the option when we bring forth the 2018 codes. I will be bringing my recommendations that I feel fit this area. These are international building codes. What fits in California, I'm sorry, doesn't really fit in Belton, Missouri. So there are sections of the code that we do not need to adopt. There are sections of the code that we need to amend to fit Belton, Missouri.
Would that fall under ex post facto or a grandfather clause on, not like in your case where you had it inspected 15 years ago?
Well, I would say common sense to me says put in a receiver that determines that. I had a daughter who was in college years ago, and that at a real place down in Warrensburg, and she very much ended up in the hospital because of carbon monoxide. So good common sense says put one in. Now, whether it's code or not, if you want to make sure that you wake up in the morning and you have gas appliances in there, probably a good idea that you have one. What can I say?
You were going to say something, Renee. Go ahead.
Actually, this is Daryl. He'd like to talk to you.
Tell everybody who you are, Daryl, and give an address and all that, please.
Daryl Shriver, 16917 East 170th Court, Belton, Missouri. I've been a Belton landlord close to 40 years, 35 plus. Just had a couple of comments. You were speaking about the Section 8. I used to do quite a bit of it. I got out of it because too many of the tenants are irresponsible. It's a free ride. Mom gets on it, daughter's on it 18 years later, and right on down the line. They got to the point that damages were my responsibility. I paid for them. Of course, I collected deposits. But to simplify it, I went to working class people. And I've been happy ever since. That doesn't mean that every tenant's perfect, but overall, I don't have to deal with Section 8. You were talking about defects in the houses. I have a duplex. Tenant had rotting floors in the bathroom. I wasn't aware of it until I went in to take care of something else and found out the toilet was rocking. The tenant's not there anymore. I had the option, because they were on a month-to-month, to just terminate the agreement, and I used the actual fact that the building needed structural improvements, and it wasn't fit for them to live there. It's currently sitting empty until I get time to work on it and do it properly. As far as inspections, I'm not in objection to a complaint-based. I've had a couple of complaints, and they were immediately taken care of. I try to prepare, and I do most of my own work. When I get through with a place, it's someplace that I would be comfortable to live in. Might not be the perfect situation, but it would be comfortable. I know what kind of condition it's in when I turn it over to a tenant. Now, 2 years down the road, I may not know. There may be deficiencies. But if the city could do a job of informing tenants that they have the ability to call codes, file a complaint. If they're afraid to do it, have their neighbor file a complaint for them and put it back on codes. And then the tenant should allow them in. If there's something there that I've refused to take care of, then codes ought to be in there taking a look at it. And basically the inspections, I don't like them. I don't think they're necessary on my properties. But if you have to do it, let's do it when the unit is empty and I've had a chance to go through it and know what that building is. And then if there's a problem that I've overlooked, I'll get it taken care of. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Anybody else? Council people? Anybody? Okay, we're going to adjourn the work session, and at this time, I think we're going to take a break. And now, Chief, what do we have outside? We want our good landlords to do this too. What do we got outside? Will we take a break?
I brought our new ambulance that we got in last week up, if anybody wanted to take a look at it.
If you want to look at the new ambulance, we'll take, what, a 10-minute break?
10-minute break.
10 minute? Come back.
Reconvene at 7:15.
7:15, okay? Thank you. We're adjourned. To order, and I think I probably ought to go all the way back to the top here and say the date of August 13th, 2019, and we'd like to ask Councilwoman Davidson to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen. Could we have the roll call, please?
Mayor Davis,
Here.
Councilman Savage, Councilman Lathrop,
Here.
Councilman Trutzel,
Here.
Councilman Van Winkle,
Here.
Councilman Clark,
Here.
Councilman Finn, Councilwoman Davidson,
Here.
Councilwoman Pink.
Here.
Consent agenda, one motion, non-debatable, to approve the recommendations noted. Any member of the council may ask for an item be taken from consent agenda for discussion and separate action.
Present.
Second. Motion and a second. Did you get those, Donna? Okay, discussion. Councilman Trutzel.
Just a little clarification about the crack seal. What, is this just an oil type of asphalt? What do we got here for the crack seal?
It's the crack seal that our street crew is going to place in those, the cracks on the street to seal
But
it.
what is the material? That's what
I'll let Monty Johnson, he was the one that's in charge of the program, I'll let him talk.
well, okay, I understand.
You know, I've done this for several years. No, I won't say that. I'm kidding.
Included in your packet is the cost, obviously, but it also has the quotes as well as the material makeup of what crack seal is. It's basically a byproduct, a rubberized tar byproduct, and it's designed to hopefully last 3 to 6 years to extend the life of our roadways.
Is this strictly for the cracks only? It's not, oh, it's okay.
Yes, it's minute cracks, and the whole objective is to fill those minute cracks so water can't penetrate, especially in winter time, that makes it worse. As far as the freeze-thaw cycle breaking up the roadway.
Be a lot of hand labor. I mean, it's a lot of cracks out there to fill up.
It is. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Well, it's nice and cool, Monty, anyway, so. Any other questions or consideration, Councilman
I
Platt?
just have a question on E for Captain Spears here, and you might not know the answer. It seemed like a pretty big discrepancy between what was budgeted and what's being spent on those agreement with Kenton Brothers. I think there's supposed to be like a $38,000 or $40,000 budgeted item, and we're only spending $45.59. I was just trying to figure out how we're so far off on. I get a couple $1,000, but
What letter is that, Councilman?
it's number E.
I believe it's because this is just for the maintenance agreement.
The maintenance agreement with
that-
Kenton Brothers.
Yes, there's going to be other items, but this is specifically for.
Oh, so this is just part of that whole budget
sir.
process?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. Moving on. Personal appearances. Wow, I gotta get up. I'd like to acknowledge at this time Tom McPherson. Would you come up, please? Councilwoman Mayor Pro Tem Peak, would you come over to about the MML Civic Leadership Award? We gave this to Tom over at the Longview Mansion here a few weeks ago, and we wanted to let everybody see kind of what it was. It's a big celebration of your best people. Tom, you gotta get in the middle of it. Okay. And then
Councilwoman Peak has the.
Councilwoman does have a list, have something.
I have to read.
You're gonna read it, go ahead.
Okay. Congratulations to Tom McPherson, the Belton 2019 Civic Leader of the Year. He was awarded this prestigious honor from the Missouri Municipal League. Tom has served Belton in many ways that include as a councilman, on the Planning Commission, on the TIF Commission, on the Charter Review Board, on the Codes Advisory Committee, on the Building and Fire Prevention Codes Board of Adjustments, on the Enhanced Enterprise Zone Board, and the Better Belton Community. He was recognized he was recognized at last night's city council meeting for his efforts. Actually, tonight's city council meeting for your efforts. Wow. Congratulations, Tom.
Thanks.
Can we get a picture from Sheila or somebody who apparently here? I'm working. Get in there, Councilman.
I'm right here.
Try not to push you out.
Okay. Thank God for titanium and pain pills. That's good stuff. We'll make it to consent agendas. We're now at ordinances. A motion approving the first reading of bill number 2019-44.
An ordinance approving a special use permit to allow a home daycare with more than 4 children at 206 Mary Way Belton, Cass County, Missouri.
Present.
Second.
Motion is second. Discussion.
I mean, I have some discussion, not necessarily related to this specific case, but I understand that there have been changes in Missouri law regarding in-home daycares. I was contacted last night by a lady that uses she's a resident of Belton and uses a Belton in-home daycare. And I guess the provider was denied her license. And so I'm wondering how is this being addressed on a case-by-case basis? I'd like to be able to give her some information when I report back to her this evening.
Are the applicants here this evening? Has anybody seen them?
The applicant for this 206 Mary Way special use is not present this evening.
Okay. Yes, Councilwoman Peak.
Since the applicant is not here this evening, I recommend we hold this item. Therefore, I would like to make a motion to continue to the next council meeting.
How do we have to do that legally? She's made a motion.
The first step would be to withdraw the first motion to do the first reading, and then to go with Councilmember Pete's motion after that. So I forgot who made the first and second on that initial motion. So Councilmember Trutzel wanted to.
I'm not ready to withdraw. Councilman Davison, we did have an issue with the previous daycare center. I've forgotten it was it a location or was it a number of people? I've forgotten. We talked about that and they did not meet the qualifications and that's why they was rejected. Because I remember we had one that we did reject.
That was not recently, though. You're talking about.
Yeah, it wasn't recent, no.
No, I don't recall that one. I don't have that history. Yeah. And there are some recent changes in the state licensing, and perhaps I could speak with Council Member Davidson about that. I don't have that in front of me, but there are some changes in the state licensing, and our requirements just meet up against the state licensing. So if you've got a state license, you're okay with Belton. Because
she has a state license on this. Mm-hmm. And we actually went through the process, and there were a lot of people here that were very supportive of her home daycare center.
Okay, what I think we're saying is that do we do away with the first motion and just have them come back and then we deal with this issue again? If you want to withdraw your motion for now.
I can withdraw.
Mayor Davis, I guess my question, this went through the planning and zoning process and staff process. I mean, they approved it. I mean, I don't know why they have to come to our meeting. They had to go to planning and zoning and get approval from them. So I read the planning and zoning minutes on this one. I don't know. I mean, it's a daycare. There's a lot of them in our community. I don't ever remember them coming before the city council. I remember them coming before planning and zoning when I was on there, but never city council. So I guess I don't understand why we're trying to delay the vote on this. I guess I'm just trying to get clarification why we're trying to delay the vote.
You had your hand up. Did you want to say something?
I do. I just think because we have these current changes that the state has made, and there was some concern when this first came to planning and zoning, because I was here at the meetings, about the number of children, and that's where the change has been made. And I would like to be able to ask the applicant if she's aware of these changes and how she's going to address them, because it does affect the children that she has that belong to her. It affects the total number, and I would just like to know if she's aware of the change and how it's going to affect the number of 10.
Does anybody know if they got the permit from the state?
Yeah, they do have a license from the state of Missouri, right? Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that's for the new number or the old number?
No, it's for the old program, 10 plus plus related children. So they're gonna have to change their operation, their business model in order to meet new state requirements. But that's on them. And that's something they're gonna need to do. It has nothing to do with our special use permit.
Okay, you were gonna say something else, Councilwoman? You had your hand in the air again.
I did talk to the state today just to clarify this new statute, and they did say it goes into effect August 28th. The governor signed it in July, and that there are a lot of in-home daycares that are having to make adjustments to meet the changes of this. And so that's why I have some concerns. I just want to make sure that she's aware of all the changes with regards to the number of children. She can still have 10, but does she understand, the way I understood it, that the children that she and her husband have now count within that 10? Before, they didn't count. She could have she could have nieces and nephews there that did not count in the total. But now, according to what I was told, and I'm going to call and get some more verification after talking to Patrick, but I just want to make sure that we are making sure that the children that is in this particular daycare are going to be safe.
Councilman Clark.
This is Dave Clark talking. This is an ordinance, first reading. We don't have to do second reading tonight, by the way. I I guess my question would be going back to Dave. I mean, we can do first reading and wait on second reading, still be denied in 2 weeks, still the same thing. How many daycare providers we have in communities that are in-home? 35%? I mean,
I don't know the exact answer. There are not that many special use permits for daycare. If you have 4 or less, you don't need a special use permit. So those we don't track, those we
Right.
don't know anything about.
well, personally, I think we ought to move forward with this, and if Councilwoman Peak would like for them to come, we do the first reading, they can come to second reading, we can ask them the questions, we can move forward, and be done with it.
So let me clarify one thing, just for a point. Did you just count planning and zoning as the first reading? You just said a while ago.
No.
This
No.
is an ordinance, so we gotta go 2 readings, right?
Well, no, but you were alluding to the planning and zoning, though.
Well, they went through all the process of going through the proper steps of a public hearing. They went through the process of, I think this was tabled once, what I read, with planning and zoning also. So if you don't read planning and zoning minutes, that's where I learned all this. So I think they did their due diligence. Councilwoman Peak, I mean, she wants them to come. Let's do the first reading tonight. 2 weeks, we can do the second reading when they're here. If they don't show up, then we can discuss that again.
Okay, so we've had our discussion. Any other discussion before we vote on the initial motion? The initial motion to pass the first reading tonight.
Do we still have that, or did him saying he?
We didn't get it.
Because he said,
No, but you said we didn't have to have a second.
Chet did remove it. So we all go to Robert's rules now. Chet did withdraw his first motion, so that motion is off the table. But nobody seconded Councilmember Peak's motion, so that motion is not on the table. So there are no motions on the table currently. Anybody is free to make any motion that they want.
So
I would make a motion that we read the first ordinance tonight, and we invite the daycare providers in our meeting in 2 weeks to talk to them about the issues of the state, and then we can do the second ordinance at that time.
Second.
Motion and a second.
Yes.
Okay, did we need to reread the motion again? As we did this?
I think we could simplify it.
A motion to approve the first reading of bill number 2019-44.
Yeah, what he said.
That's, and we have a motion and a second. Discussion. None. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
One. So that motion passes. So we'll have the second reading and we'll inform them to come to the next meeting. Okay. Boy. That's incredible. B, a motion approving the first reading of bill number 2019-45.
An ordinance levying and fixing the rate of tax for municipal purposes for the Park Fund and for the Debt Service Fund for fiscal year 2020.
Second.
Motion and second. Discussion. No discussion. We got all these park people here tonight. We don't have any discussion on this. They've waited all night. Do we want to argue about this a little bit? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. C, a motion approving both readings of bill number 2019-46.
An ordinance approving the reappropriation and revision of the City of Belton fiscal year 2020 adopted city budget for the purpose of park projects and training.
Present.
Second.
Motion is second. Discussion. Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes.
Move for second reading.
Second.
Motion and a second for a second reading of bill number 2019-46.
An ordinance approving the reappropriate,
I got to vote on that.
oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, it's my fault. I kind of drug it out a little bit. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? That motion passes. Motion approving the second reading of bill number 2019-46.
An ordinance approving the reappropriation and revision of the City of Belton fiscal year 2020 adopted city budget for the purpose of park projects and training.
Present.
Second.
Motion and second. Discussion. Seeing none. Then we have the vote.
Councilwoman Peak,
Aye.
Councilwoman Davidson,
Aye.
Councilman Finn, Councilman Clark,
Aye.
Councilman Savage, Councilman Lathrop,
Aye.
Councilman Trutzel,
Aye.
Councilman Van Winkle,
Aye.
Mayor Davis.
Aye. That motion passes. D, a motion approving both readings of Bill number 2019-47.
An ordinance readopting ordinance number 91-2073 as amended, establishing a procedure to disclose potential conflict of interest and substantial interest for certain municipal officials.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion. Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. Got a motion
Second.
and a second for a second reading. Any discussion? Councilman Clark?
I'm assuming this is just something we do on an annual basis?
Yes,
You
it
wanna
is.
answer that? Okay.
I mean, is there changes from year to year, or is this just another ordinance that we talk about?
This is something that puts it in line so that the appropriate officials receive the documentation in order to complete the documentation for the state.
Anything else? Anybody else? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. A motion approving the second reading of Bill number 2019-47.
An ordinance readopting ordinance number 91-2073 as amended, establishing a procedure to disclose potential conflict of interest and substantial interest for certain municipal officials.
Present.
Motion is second. Discussion. Seeing none.
Councilman Lathrop,
Aye.
Councilman Savage, Councilman Finn, Councilman Trutzel,
Aye.
Councilman Van Winkle,
Aye.
Councilwoman Peak,
Aye.
Mayor Davis,
Aye.
Councilman Clark,
Aye.
Councilwoman Davidson.
Aye.
That motion passes. Resolutions. A motion approving Resolution R 2019-70.
A resolution approving task agreement 2019-3 with Olson to perform the removal of the underground used oil storage tank and associated soil sampling at Street Barn Lane in the amount of $19,110.
Present.
Motion is second. Discussion. Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. B, a motion approving Resolution R 2019-71.
A resolution approving a professional services agreement with Inns and Jester PC to review, revise, and draft the city's personnel policies and practices.
Second.
Motion is second. Discussion. Councilman Lathrop.
This is being paid for by who?
The dollars that we will use for this come from the Midwest Public Risk Loss Control Program that we have. It ensures that we look at employment liability issues, and they've agreed that those dollars from that program can be used towards this.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. C, a motion approving Resolution R 2019-72.
A resolution approving task agreement 2019-3 with Bright Construction for the Belton I-49 Outer Road Water Line Relocation Project in the amount of $165,891.
Present.
Second.
Motion is second. Discussion. Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. City Council Liaison Reports. Councilwoman Davidson, Park.
Well, I would just like to say that the end of Summer Bash was pretty awesome. And I was just narrowly beat out in the pie eating contest by chief person who is not here tonight to face his competition.
We had a stomach surgery today from too much cherry pie, I think they said, or...
I'll just say, so you had your choice of cherry or apple, and I don't like pie, so I could not identify by looking at it which I had chosen, which happened to be apple. And I'll never forget it.
Then it showed him putting, that was kind of a foul when he put the cherry pie on the table to eat it.
Listen, if he wants to eat those germs, that's on him. It was pretty amazing. So anyway, park updates. Let me get into character here. Workers are really raising the roof over at High Blue, removing old roof, and preparing for the new. The project is scheduled for 2 weeks, weather permitting. However, with rain last week and more expected this week, we will keep you posted on changes to the timeline. We appreciate your patience. Just a reminder that the back-to-school hours for the outdoor water park are underway. The water park will be open on Saturdays and Sundays, only through Labor Day. They will also be open on Labor Day, Monday, September 2nd, before closing for the season. Normal hours of operation apply, noon to 7 p.m. Join us when Jones & Company Carnival comes to Belton's Memorial Park, August 15th. So that's this, I think, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. They will also have crafters on Friday and Saturday. Carnival hours are Thursday, 5 to 9 p.m., Friday, 6 to 10 p.m., Saturday, noon to 9 p.m. Yeehaw! It's time to saddle up and grab your cowboy hat and boots and swimsuits. We're going to have a party at the Outdoor Water Park on Friday, August 23rd from 6 to 8 p.m. There will be themed games, concessions, specials, music, song requests available for $1. Also, lots of time to make a splash at the water park. Drop off the kids and make it a family night. It's for all ages. Space is limited, though. Cost is $3 at the door. Then save the date for our 6th annual Doggy Dip Day, sponsored by Man's Best Friend. We're going to have a doggone good time on Saturday, September 7th from 9 to 11 a.m. We want to let the dogs have one last dive of the season at the water park. Bring out your canine companions and join us for all the fun. Cost is $5 for each dog. Humans are free. Hope to see you there. And then there are more events coming throughout the fall, including Mamma Mia Theater in the Park on September 13th and Oktoberfest September 14th.
Carnival is Thursday. Thursday through Saturday. Do they have rides for big guys? Slide. Okay. Probably not. Okay. Wow. It'll be a lot of fun though, and they were working hard over there getting it ready to go. Okay, Bears Communications. I'm trying to think. Do we have a play coming up on Main Street right away? Tryouts or anything like that?
They've cast the next play, which is called Death Trap, and it is scheduled for September. It opens September 7th, the same weekend as Fall Festival.
Okay. Fall Festival too. Wow. Got a lot of things happening in town. City Manager, you're up.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight we have some exciting news from the Public Works Department. We're doing some, we've been posting some road closures, but it's all for good. Celia, would you like to share those?
So if you've been in West Belton, you see that we're making a lot of progress on our street preservation project, where we're actually working on Myron Avenue today, and it's one of the worst streets as far as base and subgrade. So this Saturday, we're going to be closing Cambridge Road between South Cedar Street and South Scott Avenue, beginning at 7 a.m. We're trying to coordinate around the school schedule, so we'll be closing the road 7 a.m. Saturday, working all day, and then back Monday for surfacing. So that will be between 9 and 3. So on Monday, it'll be after school starts, trying to get in there and go back in and doing that work and being done before it ends. So that's some exciting work, but be prepared for detour routes. And then MoDOT just wanted to post that they've been doing work on both directions of Route Y, from Route D to Route YY, it began today, and it should last for about 3 weeks. So the road will be closed to through traffic.
I also, related to Public Works, wanted to remind everybody, as the council will recall, there are 2 projects that the city of Raymore is working on one, the city of Belton is working on the other, as are related to the 58 highway overpass over I-49 and the widening of I-49. And we're asking, those can be found on the city's website, the links to those, and we're asking citizens to go out and make favorable comments about the importance of those road projects. community response is really important to the applications that go to MoDOT for transportation projects. And so I know that we've got a lot of people that are concerned about those areas. So this is a regional project that Raymore and Belton are working on together to try to get attention to that area. And so if our citizens could go out and take a look at that, they can find those links on the city's website, and that's for a really good cause.
Why would we want to have less traffic?
Get more people coming out here.
It's not that we want less traffic, we just want the traffic to flow a little better, I think.
You got some more?
Yes, we do. Also tonight, I think Dave's got some good news from planning and building.
Oh, there's a great renovation project I wanted to make sure the city council was aware of. Shady Lane Duplexes is an enclave of about 44 duplex units. It's south of East North Avenue and west of North Scott. We got a new ownership of those 44 duplex units, and they have obtained permits to renovate all of those units. Total interior renovations, new roofs, new carports, perimeter security fence. So it's going to be a great renovation of that existing neighborhood real close to our downtown and close to North Scott.
What is the value that they put on the overhaul?
I don't remember I can see the permit right here, but I can't remember the number of the estimate of the renovation.
Well, it was fair to say mega $1 million.
Let me get you that number.
Okay.
Yeah.
Reciting, I drove through there a couple of days ago. Looks like they're reciting that whole, all those units and.
Right.
All new windows.
I don't know how, are they gonna fence that?
It is present. There's a new fence up now, and it's gonna be designated as a 55 and over community.
I just didn't know how, that Chestnut coming in on that main first drive, how are they gonna fence that? There's like 3 units right there facing right behind Commerce Bank. Are they gonna be fences around them so they're secured, or is it gonna just be open?
No, it's a perimeter fence all the way around. All the way around.
Yeah, if you drive in there, you can see it already.
And part of their application is going to bring to the council consideration of vacating the streets so they can have a gate, a security privacy gate for controlled access. So you'll be seeing details on that coming forward later in the fall.
Good stuff.
Okay, economic development. Carolyn, you have a brief comment?
Yes, just so that everybody is aware, Chick-fil-A is in town and is testing our market. They are parked in every Tuesday from 11 to 1 at the Belton Assembly of God Church, and that address is 623 East North Ave. I was told they sold out today. Today was their 3rd Tuesday in town, so excited about that. So if you would like a Chick-fil-A, make sure and visit them on Tuesdays from 11 to 1.
And the last item that I have for the council this evening is from our golf department. There is an article, it's in Tee Times Golf Guide, and the article, it's the centerfold. It's entitled, Pristine Eagles Landing Should Not Be Overlooked. Challenging Belton Course Offers First-Class Greens and Lush Fairways. It has great photos from our course. They interviewed Jay Kennedy, our golf course manager, and it's the feature of the month and couldn't be any prouder. So I'd like to share that with council.
It looked like I saw Councilman Clark in one of the bunkers over there.
It is very challenging this weekend, I won't lie to you.
And Mayor, that concludes my report.
Yeah, he does a great job, what Jay does out there. It's a really nice golf course. Okay, other business. Councilman Tretzel.
More questions in the business. What do we know about the second hotel as far as construction and beginning construction, or?
Well, we're awaiting construction plans to come in for review to start construction. They have closed on the property. Its plat's been filed, so ownership has changed. So that's a good sign, but we have not seen any plans submitted for review for issuance.
Second question is, the work they're doing on 58 Highway, what about the roundabouts? Are they going to work on the roundabouts as well? It should be, I would assume. Do we know anything about the roundabouts, what's going on with repairs and Or
I'm not
no?
sure. I can go look at those plans tomorrow and get back with you.
Third question is, on the County Line Road, Kansas City section, where they were going to include the road, they started out great guns and then they just dissipated and nothing's going on. Does anybody know anything what's going on there or not going on? It's like they just quit and pulled up their equipment and walked away. Okay. So much. Thank you.
Councilman Clark.
Celia, and I could be very mistaken, but I thought you said that 162nd Street was going to reopen on August 2nd and then shut down sometime in September or later. So I went by there the other day and it's still shut down. So I was just trying to figure out what's going on over there because, and like I said, my recollection could be wrong on that August 2nd date.
Your recollection is correct. I talked to MoDOT and, where are you? Because they had committed to that date and they had told me now they're not going to be able to get to it. They talked about next week, but I'm trying to coordinate with them to get them out there this week because the church has a function this weekend. So the schedule is out of our control, but we're trying to do what we can for MoDOT. They had some things come up and they didn't meet the deadline that they said that they would.
Okay. I mean, I get it if it's August 5th, but August 13th. I mean, it's almost,
No.
yeah. So thank you. Fire Chief Sapp, I heard we have a fire truck out. Down a fire truck and something about maintenance or head gasket, something. Is that where we at on that one?
Well, the head gaskets have been repaired. Actually, both of them had to have head gaskets. Both were repaired under warranty. Our ladder truck has been down for several weeks now. We've been working with Conrad. There was a number of issues based on their last preventive maintenance they did, but the biggest issue we had was some functioning problems with the hydraulics. So I heard today that was actually finished. They're supposed to be looking into the other two small details, so we're hoping to have it back this week.
How's that? I mean, I hear we don't have enough equipment at the fire station 1 because that fire truck's is that an aerial? I don't know. I mean.
It is an aerial, it's a ladder truck. I mean, that wouldn't be something that we would ever have a spare of. We would just call from local departments.
Well, I asked one of the firefighters, my office is right next door, so I kept seeing that, I would call like the grass fire truck leave, the little one. I'm like, I've never seen it run that much, so I asked, why is that thing out all the time now? And that's what I was.
So we currently don't have a reserve engine, which would be, that's a future goal for us to get back. That's something we used to have, it went away. It's much more functional. What we use for our backup now is our tanker, which can only carry 2 people. And then we carry the rest of the equipment, the other people in that smaller, we call it a squad. And so it does do the job. It's just not as efficient as we'd like in these situations.
And that should be fixed soon, you said?
Yeah, hopefully tomorrow. That's always, 2 weeks.
One last question. I had a builder ask me today, so I guess it's probably Sheila or Alexa. When they're building a house and they come in to get the water turned on so they can actually finish the house, they're not actually being a resident, why are we charging them trash? And I said, I don't know, but I asked that question.
Sheila, do you have a response to that?
It's in the code. The code says that all residential properties that have water service will get charged trash. So they have.
Even if they don't have an occupational permit yet?
Yes.
It don't seem right to me, but.
You can always change the code.
I would change that code, Mayor.
Other business, Councilman Lathrop.
I have a couple of things. One of them is the gentleman was here tonight, earlier, that wanted his ditch cleaned out.
Yes.
And we told him there would be a work session, and he thought it was going to be tonight, and so.
He needs to read the
I told him it wasn't, and so he's not here now.
No, I talked to him.
Oh, you talked to him? Okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
And then we have another one on the wall or berm at North Point. Do we have somebody that's inspecting those to make sure they're put in there right? And who would that be?
We have our city building inspectors, and then there's some third-party inspectors that do some technical work for us too.
So make sure that he's making sure they're put in correctly.
Yes, sir, of course.
That was what
What are
what
they
was
gonna
planned.
put on those berms? Are they gonna, for
Well,
visibility?
it's a variety of shade trees and evergreens and fencing.
So that'll give, for a side of view, will that make a difference?
It will help, yeah, yeah.
Help to keep the view pristine is what I'm saying.
Right, depending on your location on Allen Street, there are locations where you'll see more of those buildings, and there's locations at a lower grade where you see less of the buildings.
Okay.
The berms are 10 to 12 feet in height, and the landscaping on the berms are 6 to 7 foot trees at planting. So they're not just going to be little 2-inch saplings when they're planted. They're going to be substantial 6 or 7 foot trees. So it'll be a meaningful screen upon completion, but it's not designed to hide the buildings.
Okay. Other business? Councilwoman Davidson?
I had somebody contact me about our ordinance regarding all-terrain vehicles. You probably had this too.
I got the same one.
On city property. I guess they're not permitted. And so he was inquiring as to whether or not we would entertain making them permissible via permit. And he stated that a couple other neighboring cities had done the same thing. So I don't know if that's something we could look into.
I will refer that information to Chief Person and ask him to bring information back about what other cities are doing.
Anything else? Okay. Motion to enter executive session, discuss matters pertaining to legal actions according to Missouri State Statute 610-0211, and matters pertaining to leasing, purchase, or sale of real estate according to Missouri State Statute 610-0212, and the record be closed, and the meeting adjourned from there.
Present. Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Davidson? Aye. Councilman Clark?
Aye.
Councilwoman Peak?
Aye.
Councilman Van Winkle?
Aye.
Councilman Trutzel?
Aye.
Mayor Davis?
Aye.
Councilman Lathrop?
Aye.
Motion passes. We're adjourned. Thank you.